Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we are diving into a term you've probably heard thrown around, one that sounds pretty academic and, let's be honest, a little intimidating: deconstruction. We're going to break down what it actually is and why it completely shook up how we think about words and meaning.
To get our heads in the right space, let's start with a kind of wild idea that's right at the heart of deconstruction. I want you to imagine your favorite book, but instead of a solid thing with one clear message, what if it was designed to sort of self-destruct from the inside out?
So, in a nutshell, this is the core idea. Deconstruction argues that texts just aren't stable things. The very words we use to build an argument can end up contradicting the point we're trying to make. It's like the tools are working against the builder. Okay, let's get into it.
So this first big concept is that if you look really, really closely at any piece of writing, a poem, a news article, you name it, you'll start to see these little fissures and cracks. And because of these internal tensions, finding one single stable meaning becomes basically impossible.
Yeah, you heard that right. Instead of there being a solid foundation of meaning that the author carefully built, deconstruction is all about radical skepticism. It suggests that what's really there is an absence of fixed meaning. The words are always falling short, never quite capturing what they're aiming for. So where did this incredibly disruptive idea even come from? Well, to get that, we've got to meet the main architect behind this whole school of thought. This is the guy Jacques Derrida. He was a French philosopher who basically threw a grenade into traditional ideas about language and meaning. I mean, his work sent massive shockwaves through literary theory and philosophy, and we're still wrestling with his ideas today.
This quote really nails his whole point. For Derrida, meaning is always deferred. It's always being pushed down the line. Think about it. You look up a word in the dictionary, and what's the definition? Just more words. You never actually get to a final, concrete meaning. You just get more signs pointing to other signs.
And for him, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical game. It was deeply political. He argued that powerful institutions love to claim there's only one correct way to read a text because that's how they maintain control. Deconstruction, he thought, was a way to challenge that power by showing that texts are always full of competing, contradictory meanings. Okay, I know. This is all getting pretty abstract, so let's make it concrete. We're going to look at a fascinating and, frankly, pretty wild example of deconstruction in action. So you've got this scholar, Stephen Moore, and when he reads the Gospel of Mark, he's not trying to figure out what the author originally meant. Not at all. He's doing something called free play, which means he's just following the chain of associations in the language, wherever it happens to lead. He starts with the most central symbol in the whole text, the cross. And he makes a connection. A cross has a crisscross shape, right? Well, that reminds him of a literary device called a chiasmus, which is just a fancy term for a crosswise structure in writing. And here's where the free play really kicks in. He follows the word chiasmus back to the Greek letter chi, which is shaped like an X and pronounced ki. Then he notices that ki is an anagram of ich, which is the German word for I, as in the self. A huge leap, right? And this just perfectly shows the method. He then links the Greek for I am to the French je suis. So see what's happening? Meaning isn't a single point anymore. It's this sprawling web of associations connecting Greek, German, and French, all based on sound and shape. It's totally detached from the original historical context. Okay, if that last example made your head spin a little, don't worry. Here's a much more straightforward one. In the book of Revelation, the author is constantly condemning the violence of the Roman Empire. But then what happens? The hero of the story, God, turns around and uses that exact same kind of overwhelming violence to punish Rome. A deconstructive reading just points at that and says, see, the text is fighting with itself. It's undermining its own moral stance. So the big question is, why on earth would anyone read a text this way? Well, the answer isn't just about playing literary games. It goes much, much deeper, right down to the philosophical foundations of this entire movement. At its core, deconstruction often starts from the assumption that there is no ultimate capital T truth, no God, no external reality that anchors meaning. And if you start there, then reading can't possibly be about finding the one true meaning of a text, because, in this worldview, there isn't one to find. And that's the key right there. Without that anchor, what's left? According to Derrida, all that's left is to play inside the endless, shimmering web of language. The goal isn't to arrive at a final destination of meaning. The goal is to explore all the possibilities and contradictions along the way. Okay, so I get it. This can all sound pretty chaotic, right? Maybe even a bit destructive or pointless. So what's the takeaway? Is there any actual value in looking at the world through this lens?
Well, even if you don't fully buy into the whole philosophy, many would argue it offers some really valuable reminders. First, it reminds us that interpretation is often messy. There aren't always clean, simple answers. Second, it forces us to pay attention to the awkward parts of a text, the tensions we might normally just ignore. And finally, it can bring a bit of humility to the table, reminding us that our own perspective is never the only one and never the final word.
So, in the end, deconstruction leaves us with this really challenging question about what we're actually doing when we sit down to read something. Are we archaeologists carefully uncovering a single meaning that an author buried in the text? Or are we more like children, just playing in the beautiful, unstable, and fascinating ruins that language leaves behind? It's definitely something to think about.